Mr. Chairman, we're live.
Thank you. We'll call this meeting to order. This is corporations, elections, and political subdivisions. Thank you, everybody, for staying late. Very hard-working group of representatives here on your corporations committee. And Matt, thank you very much as well. So we will start tonight with House Bill 144 with Speaker Nyman. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's call roll first here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is roll call. Representative Brown,
Present.
Representative Locke,
Present.
Representative Heft,
Here.
Representative Johnson,
Present.
Representative Lucas,
Happily present.
Representative Webb,
Here.
Representative Weber,
Here.
Representative Yin,
Excused.
Chairman Knapp.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Speaker, the floor is yours for House Bill 144.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to be before the Corporations Committee a second time today. Always a pleasure to be with you folks. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you House Bill 144, County Canvassing Board, and would ask for your favorable consideration. Just to give you a few ideas of exactly what we're trying to accomplish here, this was actually a bill that was suggested by my sheriff in one of my counties in my district as another layer of being able to provide accountability and transparency and more oversight into our election process. Currently, the system is designed to have the county clerks select their local county canvassing boards. And the suggestion was made to me, maybe we ought to be looking at, instead of doing it that way, allowing each one of the major parties to be able to provide one person from their precinct committee people appointed to that board and allowed to be able to serve under the county clerk to provide another layer of opportunity to be able to have transparency and accountability. That would avoid, selecting their own basically oversight or their canvassing board. This would allow them to be able to receive folks that are selected from the precincts of each one of the major parties, and that would then populate the county canvassing board. And so that, I don't, there's no point in getting any deeper into the weeds than that. That is exactly what this is about. It's just changing currently from a board or, basically a board that is selected by the clerk to having somebody that will be appointed by each one of the major parties to serve with the clerk and to create that canvassing board, which I believe this adds another level of openness and accountability. So I don't know if there's a lot to go really through the bill, ladies and gentlemen. It's pretty straightforward. We strike some language in here and replace and basically tell you that the central committee of each one of the two largest major political parties, I'm on page 2, beginning at line 13, major political parties in the county, if there are not two major political parties in the county, or if a county central committee fails to select an elector for the county canvassing board under the section, the county clerk may appoint an unfilled position in the county canvassing board, provided that the two electors shall be from a different political party. It's just an opportunity to be able to provide some outside folks that are being designated. These would be from folks that are duly elected, that would come out of the precinct committees, or that they would appoint from each one of the major parties to be able to occupy that board. Simply it. And we'd be glad to stand for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Does anybody from the committee have any questions on the bill?
I do.
Yes, Representative Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Speaker Nyman. Not sure what to call. I have a question for you. I'm pretty sure that you have spoken with the county clerks about this. What was their thoughts on changing up this process?
Mr. Speaker?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, through you to Representative Weber. I've had some conversations, and I trust that they're going to come up and opine on this as well. I do believe they have some suggestions on how we can add some amendments to this to make it a little easier for what we're wanting to try to accomplish here. They have some suggestions on on potentially, appointing others if the local parties are not able to fulfill that obligation. And so I would just prefer to just step back and let them answer those questions for you, because they're gonna do a far better job of answering that for you. And I am fully willing to work with our Clerks Association to whatever they see on this, that we can adjust and amend and make this bill better. I did have those conversations previous to this, and they had mentioned that they would like to bring some amendments. I look forward to those amendments, and I'm glad to work with them on those amendments, so.
Follow up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaker Nyman, did you also have a conversation with like the political party leadership, major party leadership?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Representative Weber, yes, I did. I actually visited with some of the local parties actually in the county where this kind of out of Weston County. They didn't see any issue with that. They embraced that. I had heard from some leadership from other counties saying, well, hey, what are we gonna do if maybe we can't find in this situation a potential Democrat to fill that position, because it is kind of difficult, and how would we accomplish that? I do believe that the clerks are going to be able to come up with some of that. We talked a little bit about maybe county commissioners being involved in this, to be able to select someone. I just like the idea of this working through people that have been duly elected, and to provide those names. And I do believe our Clerks Association and their representatives are going to be able to opine on that. So
Thank you. No further questions.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
thank you, committee. Appreciate your time.
Okay, next up, if we can hear from the Clerks Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Malcolm Irvin. I'm the president of the County Clerks Association and also the Platte County Clerk. Given that we have a blank check that we were allowed to write on Speaker Nyman's bill, we look forward to that, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things on the County Canvassing Board bill first that we think needs some clarification. Number one, a firm date that party needs to appoint those folks. Currently, there's no specified date, the deadline for them to appoint. So, Mr. Chairman, we would just ask you to make that consideration. Number two, define largest. Our assumption is it's most registered voters. I think it's important at this point to remind you there are currently 2 major parties, but that's not always the case. In 2018, there were 4 major parties, and in some counties, there were parties that are now considered minor parties that actually had more registered voters than the 2 current major parties. So I think just clarifying that largest is the most registered voters within that county. That's the third part of it, is clarifying not just the most registered voters to that party within the state, but within that county in specific. So those are just 3 of the clarifications we'd like made. As the speaker alluded, we would ask to entertain some amendments. I think first off, it's important to note the County Canvassing Board really is an analytical board. It's a working board. Those folks are reviewing poll books, reconciliations. It's not just a matter of sitting on a dais and hearing the information. It's a working board, Mr. Chairman, and so it really should be analytical in nature. And as such, our concern is it turning political in nature, whether any major party appoints somebody for a specific political reason. Pick your reason. They appoint somebody to the board specifically to not certify for a political reason. We want them to be able to hear the evidence. We want them to hear the data and then really weigh it and be a deliberative, analytical body. And so, Mr. Chairman, the decision on how this is accomplished clearly is up to you. We would propose 3 options. The first is that the board increases in size to 5 members. It's currently 3 members, so it would maintain the county clerk, the 2 people appointed by the clerk, and then the last 2 members are appointed by the major political parties. Number 2, and I'm happy to slow down if I need to, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Number 2, fill those positions similar to how we fill vacancies for political positions right now, which is the 2 largest political parties. Again, need to define that, but the two major parties submit three names to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners would select those canvassing board members. Again, trying to understand and work within Speaker Nyman's bill here that the county clerk would not make that selection. So the Board of County Commissioners would make it similar to political appointments. Or number three, Mr. Chairman, that and this is probably the simplest, I've not talked to my commissioner colleagues. I know they're in the room, so let me know if their gazes are a little rough here. But number three would be that the Board of County Commissioners actually serves as the county canvassing board. I think there needs to be specified that the clerk is, I'm sensing some heat. Would need to specify that the clerk is an ex officio member of that board. We still need to present the information. We still need to go through the poll books. But Mr. Chairman, they're used to serving as a deliberative body, an appeals body right now. And so those would be our three potential suggestions if you see fit. But we would specifically ask that those three clarifications be made. Number one, a date for that party to appoint. Number two, who's the largest and who's telling them they're the largest. And then number three, notifying those parties that they need to appoint those members. Because at some point, somebody's going to need to notify them that they're due this appointment. So, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
So I had one question. Number one, the board increases to 5 members. That's one from each party, the clerk, and then the 2 selected by the clerk.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And part of that, Mr. Chairman, just to expand a little bit on that, we don't necessarily appoint a Republican and a Democrat. In some counties, there's not a formed Democratic Party, or it's difficult, as the speaker mentioned, to get Democratic representation. And so we'll select Constitution Party members, unaffiliated members, Libertarians. So it wouldn't necessarily still be all major political parties, but at least the 2 major political parties, if they're formed, would have those appointments in that option.
Okay. Any questions? None? Oh, yes, Representative Weber.
Thank you, Chairman Knapp. Thank you for being here. I have a question, well, I have a bunch of questions. When it comes to the 2 major parties, I know that it doesn't waver. I mean, we have the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. And then I know in the past, we've had other parties. I'm okay with that part. Something that you had said kind of sparked something, because I know even in the county that I'm from, there has been an increase in unaffiliated. I don't believe that's a political party, and it would be concerning if that was the largest group. I don't have an answer, just a comment on that. Just from the part about the Board of County Commissioners serving as a canvassing board, I'm not reading into anything, but we may have some county commissioners here, and I felt like that was not accepted. I don't know why, but they might not want to do that. So I understand what you're saying about them choosing. Why not have as an alternative, instead of the county commissioner choosing, why not have the major party choose, like the Wyoming Republican Party, for example, or the Democrat Party,
Mr. Urban.
just as an option? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things to unpack there. Number one, I'll start with the unaffiliated members. If there was a county where unaffiliated members somehow had more folks registered to vote than one of the 2 major parties, we would still consider the parties, because this bill says political parties. And so under our current system where the clerk appoints, a clerk may use their discretion in that position where, well, I've got more unaffiliated representation, I might select that, but that's exceedingly rare, Mr. Chairman, just and so we're clear. But it is interesting, we hadn't thought about that. Number 2, the question about Speaker Nyman's bill essentially as is. Our concern is that it just makes this analytical board a political board, and that they're appointed for a specific political reason or to make a specific political point. Mr. Chairman, we understand if the policy decision is that the clerk wouldn't make that decision, we're just making sure the board remains an analytical board. They've got work to do, physical work to do, review those poll books and reconciliations. So just trying to find a way that it would be more analytical in nature as opposed to political in nature.
Follow up?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a follow-up, since I've been on a canvassing board in my past, I didn't think it was more analytical than things that most people would probably do every day. Thank you.
Mr. Irvin, comment?
Mr. Chairman, the reason I say analytical is that board is reviewing reconciliations, poll books, oaths, voter registration, and so really consuming a lot of data, a lot of information, and actually physically going through those materials. And so that's why, Mr. Chairman, I would classify it as more analytical. I understand Representative Weber's point, which is every board really is analytical in nature. We just want to make sure that composition doesn't turn, or they're not appointed for a political purpose. That's my point here, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. And follow up. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other association want to comment on this? All right, anybody from the public here on this issue? This is House Bill 144. Welcome. I won't cut you off in this meeting. You can go all night long if you want to.
That's it.
Okay. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Gail Simmons from Sheridan County, Civics 307, and Why Vote? And I'm glad I didn't change into my jammies while I was home listening to the budget. I am on and against this bill. I was trying to figure out, Mr. Chairman, what happened. Why was this even being presented? And so what I heard was that it was suggested by a sheriff to provide accountability, transparency, and oversight. That's what I heard is the problem that needs to be solved. And so what it sounded like is one sheriff in one county suggested that the responsibility of the elected county clerk for the canvassing board should be transferred to a political party. And so I'm wondering, is this a reaction to the problem with the ballot counting in Weston County, which I don't know about you, but I'm tired of hearing about. And I'll bet the people in Weston are tired of living with it. So that's a fair. If not, what occurred that made this sheriff question the clerk's abilities in carrying out something they've been doing for decades? What failing in any of transparency, accountability, and oversight occurred in more than one county? Because to take a single incident and use that as the basis, Mr. Chairman, to make changes to our statutes doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then while it is true that the precinct committee members are elected to their small to large area, I happen to be in a precinct that's usually has about 100 voters. It is a stretch in any way, shape, or form to compare the central party committee to elected county officers chosen by all voters in the county. We have, I think it's 8 countywide elected officials that go through a primary, go through a general, and essentially are responsible for the entire county. If it's felt that a single incident is worth that, then the extension to 5 is a good compromise to the bill proposal. And having 2 selected by the Board of County Commissioners, who again are selected by all voters to cover all of the county, from nomination by the party is a compromise, an acceptable compromise. And I stand for questions.
Representative Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Just as a clarification on the Board of County Commissioners, they are elected by the county, but by the party. They're a party, they run by party. So it would be the party, if they were all Republican, then it would be Republicans choosing the precinct committee people. And your group does not have any concerns with that?
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman,
Simmons.
Representative Weber, I am my group. I'm not, so the proposal that I heard was that if it expanded to 5, with the 3 being what they currently have, and just extended to 2 with 2 major parties, where the central committee comes up with 3 names to present to the Board of County Commissioners, of which they would take 1 from each major party, then that Board of County Commissioners also, to clarify, are elected by everyone, the 95% of registered voters in each county actually historically participate, Mr. Chairman, in the general election. And they are not officially elected until November, not in August, but in November. So they are elected, and their responsibilities in statute are to serve the entire county. So.
Follow up?
Yeah.
As a follow-up, I think I read in here that it would be the precinct committee men and precinct committee women would be chosen for one of the 2 roles by the commissioners, but actually the precinct committee men and committee women are actually elected by their, their precincts and district.
Mr. Chairman,
Simmons.
Representative Weber. So I was saying that it is true that the committee people are elected by those affiliated with their party who bother showing up for the primary, which is about 65 to 70%. And there are a lot of undervotes. Nonetheless, they are officially selected in that primary to represent the Republicans in their small area. My point is that the responsibility of the elections has always been with the county clerks, Mr. Chairman, and that by having the central committee come up with 3 nominations for each major, they're still involved in that. And yet the Board of County Commissioners in that recommendation would be the ones who actually selected from those. So it would be a precinct person, but the selection would be by somebody who is voted in by a November general election.
Thank you.
Any follow-up?
I hope I'm making,
We don't.
and I'm
none
not
of
near
us
as tired
know-
as you guys.
None of us know if we're making sense right now, honestly. Any other questions from the committee? Representative Lucas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Simmons, I hear what you said, but I don't understand why you're saying that. So could you please elaborate a little bit more?
Ms.
Certainly,
Simmons?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lucas. So right now, the responsibility for, in statute, the responsibility, I believe, lies solely with the county clerk. So this is an elected official with a current statutory requirement to fill the county canvassing board. So this is an elected official through the processes and officially thereafter November. So what this bill is suggesting is to take a responsibility that is currently with an elected county official and saying, we're going to have the county central committee for these major parties do that instead. And I'm saying that if they give input that makes sense, similar to to what they do on a vacancy, then that's fine, but the decision on who actually serves should be made by a duly elected county officer or board of county officers. Does that, Mr. Chairman, does that clarify?
Does that answer your question, Representative Lucas? Okay, no more follow-up?
Great.
All right, thank you. Mr. Speaker, would you like to comment on any? Is there any other person that's here to testify on this? Okay, Mr. Speaker. You have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the indulgence. A couple of things that were brought up by the previous testimony there, just to kind of bring some clarification to this whole situation. As many of you already know, I was involved in a deal in my area here that was what prompted this. So yes, I mean, I don't know if this was pretty isolated incident, but it was pretty impactful to the people that I represent. As you all well know, that, I mean, in my election in that particular district, there was a major undervote. I was running unopposed in the general and was able to manage to be undervoted by, I think it was 1,189 votes. The reason I found out about it was because somebody called me from Johnson County at 1 o'clock in the morning and said, I just looked at your election results. He said, what did you do to the people of Weston County that made them that mad? And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm sure I could, it's well within my capacity to frustrate people, but I didn't realize I'd made that many mad. And so anyway, upon further examination, I guess when you get into it, well, and you all know, I don't know if we need to recount all the details, but ultimately after a hand count and calling into question the vote that was sent to the Secretary of State, I got 1,165 of those votes back. Well, in the situation, I guess what concerns me, and you know, and it's kind of interesting talking about, you know, this is kind of taking some of the responsibility the clerk's way. Quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, I see it in a little bit of a different light. Actually, this takes pressure off of the clerks. Because in that situation, they were the ones that had picked the group of people that signed off on that and sent it on to the state without questioning what the situation was. And my understanding was it was considered a protest vote and nobody questioned it. Not saying that this will fix that, but I think the people in my part of the country were very upset and very frustrated with the fact that many of them at that point, their votes they were disenfranchised in a way that, like, I don't never seen before. And then when the recount came back and the hand count also took into account a commissioner race where there was 2 running, vote for 2. And because of the way the ballots were handled and the situation where there were spoiled ballots that were used in that particular election, that there were transfers of amounts between those 2 commissioners. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, I'm all about trying to figure out how to make sure that people are completely satisfied with our elections and that they're confident that it's actually being done in a way that they know that their votes are being counted. I got a phone call from a gentleman in Osage, Wyoming early that morning, and he says, I've been disenfranchised. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, I'm an election judge, and he said, and I know you got more votes than what it shows that you received. And I'm like, how do you know this? He said, because I've talked to my family. He said, you received 3 votes. He said, I know you got 5 from my family alone. And so that's what really opened the door to this. And ladies and gentlemen, my ultimate goal here is to make sure that we can do everything that we possibly can to create layers of confidence in our election systems. And the suggestion was made to me that rather than have the clerk in the responsible position of having to select these people, give that person another option that takes the responsibility off of them, that they are given people that are somebody that they didn't choose, which actually, in my mind, provides protection for that clerk. Because right now, if you're hiring the people that are verifying your work, I don't know what that relationship is, but to me, I would look for something like this to provide a layer of accountability and to remove that pressure. So I'm just trying to figure out another, even in a very small way, to provide folks in my part of the country more layers of confidence in our system. And so that was the nexus of this. And I think they have every right to expect elections that they can trust. And right now, there's a lot of folks up in my part of the country that are very distrustful of what happened. They want to go and reopen the primary. They like, how do we know everything was the way it was supposed to be when it's already passed water under the bridge now? And quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, if my race had not been unopposed, and that had been an opposed race, that could have disappeared into the ether and nobody would have known it, because it would have never been called into question. And so this is not going to fix that necessarily, but I do believe it's another tool in the toolbox to make sure that we have yet another level of confidence that I think we can give to our voters.
Mr. Speaker, I had two questions, and somebody keep close track and write in case there's an amendment coming out of this. But you heard the Clerks Association testimony of increasing that number to 5 for the canvassing board. Since this is your bill bringing forward, would you have any comment to that?
I would hate to see it get too big, because then I'm going to be accused of growing government. But if the Clerks Association are good with that and they feel confident that would be a good way to do it, I have absolutely no problem with that.
Okay, and then of the 3 suggestions that they made, one, the board increases to 5 members with 2 major political parties, the clerk choosing the 2 as well as themselves. Number 2 was fill positions with the 2 major political parties, submit 3 names to the county commissioners for that selection. Or number 3, simply use the Board of County Commissioners as the canvassing board. Of those 3, do you have any comment on any one of those?
Mr. Chairman, I really like number 3. You're welcome. No, I'm kidding. I know those guys really probably don't want to have to take that responsibility, but I guess my interest would be, I really do like the idea of both major parties submitting a name. I think that just provides some skin in the game for both of them. The clerk, I would like to see them be able to maybe, pick another person if they feel like that's something for them. But ultimately, I really want it to be that the majority of them would be someone that is not selected by the clerk. Because I personally believe that provides cover for the clerk. Because then they're not the one that picked the majority vote of that canvassing board for whatever reason. So maybe a suggestion would be if the county commissioners could select one person, whomever they choose. I mean, whatever you want to do on that kind of a deal, but just provide one person's name to the clerk that would be appointed to that canvassing committee. So there you would have, you've got your clerk, you've got your 2 from each of those parties, so that's 3. The commissioners maybe could pick 2. And that would give you an odd group. The clerk would vote and would make sure that they're a part of that. If 5 would work, I'm certainly good with that, whatever the Clerks Association is good with.
So that's kind of a morphing of 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Representative Weber?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Speaker Nyman. I like the idea of the board consisting of 5 members and how it's chosen. The county clerk definitely should choose a couple of people. I like the idea of the major party choosing from their already duly elected precinct committee men and women. I really don't see the need for a third step or a third layer of the Board of County Commissioners approving the county, the political party choices. If it came from the county Republican Party and they picked, person A, I don't see why it would have to go in front of the county commissioners to choose that. I would feel like the political party in your county or mine or the other 23 could definitely pick already elected precinct committee man or woman to be chosen to be on that board. And that would easily take out an added step that the commissioners may not want.
You want to
Mr. Chairman?
slap a "would you agree" on the end of that?
Would you agree,
Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Chairman, through you,
For
to
walking away
Representative,
from that?
agreed.
Okay.
And so, yeah, no, I mean, and that's fine. I mean, I don't want to make this any more complicated than is necessary. I want it to work for everybody involved. My heart in this is I just want to provide a layer of protection for everybody involved. I want my clerks to know that they've got somebody that's gonna shoulder the responsibility, and if somebody comes and starts blaming each other for something that they perceive that happened, the clerk can say, well, these are people that were sent to me by all of you guys involved in making this process work well. You can't lay this all at my door because I didn't handpick this group to just sign off on whatever I do, is what I see in this. I would like for them to be able to have some protection, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it also adds a layer of confidence from the electorate saying, okay, then we've got some oversight, we've got some outside people that are involved in this, they're seeing they're a part of the process, and that's something that we've had a responsibility in providing to the clerk to make this possible. And so that's what it boils down to, ladies and gentlemen. My whole heart in this is to try to make sure that our voters in Wyoming are confident that their votes are being counted and that the method and everything that's going on here is overseen and overseen well. And it's hopefully done impartially. And as far as the political aspect of it, I think if you've only got one from each major party there, and then, you know, they don't have enough to gain to be able to sway this thing. I mean, they just don't have enough votes. So, but they're there to represent their parties and to be a part of the process and to provide cover for really the clerks and for themselves and for the electorate to provide that oversight, so.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is there any other question? Representative Weber, do you have any follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Speaker Nyman. I think it also in here that you had some protection for if the major party could not get a candidate forward, that the county clerk would be the one picking that third person possibly.
Mr.
Would you
Chairman?
agree would you be okay with that?
Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, through you to Representative Weber. That was just a determination that I received from some folks in Campbell County that said, hey, you know, we have a really hard time finding a Democrat to be able to fill this position. So how would you fill that? And that was the suggestion then. Well, then find another party that would be willing to pick that person or select that person and make a fair and equitable way to find that person. I'm not particular on that. However it works the best, it isn't gonna create a bunch of heartache for everybody. I mean, if you really want to drag it in, maybe the Secretary of State could pick that person. If it ever is a situation where nobody can come up with the right person or something like that, maybe I don't know. That seems like that's reaching quite a ways out beyond the county level where this is gonna be taking place. It would be better, I think, if it was led by commission or something like that, the commissioners. But, I guess if you're finding a way you can't get somebody to sign up for it, then we've got to find somebody that's willing to serve that. And if it's one of the parties, then I would think the commission would be the one that would be the logical choice, because they are duly elected and by the general election, and that would be everybody involved, so.
I agree, and I would point out that they do that with other elected openings as well in picking those positions too, so. Follow up, any other? All right, I think that's it.
Okay,
You,
thank you.
you can go back to the floor.
Okay, all right, very good. I still want to put in a pitch for the commissioners just to do the whole thing, but I mean, they're not even engaged anymore, ladies and
Okay,
gentlemen,
at this
All right.
point, if there's no other person to speak, we'll close public testimony on this bill. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved by Representative Weber, second by Representative Brown. Are there any amendments to the bill? Let's go page by page here, I guess.
Yeah, I can make a couple of comments. You know,
Yes, Representative Weber.
thank you, Chairman Knapp. I know that the commissioners in my area seem to be pretty busy, and it seems like this would be a unwanted task. And I have heard from some of the news, I have a concern that just kind of hits me is a what if. What if they don't make a decision of the three? And then does it get sent to a judge? I would just like to avoid some things that are commonly hitting the news today. I don't have an answer for that, except to take it out of the hands of yet another entity besides the county clerk or the county party, who would be picking from duly elected precinct committee men or women. And any comments would be helpful.
Representative Lucas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, one of the speakers earlier had said that the central committee members or precinct members may or may not show up for a meeting. And I feel like the central committee, the body of the central committee is probably very well suited to choose canvassing board members because a lot of people do show up. I have a county party that we get between 70 and 100 people at every meeting all the time, and they're the same people. So, you know, that's a pretty reliable group. And I feel like the county, if it's the chair or if it goes to an election of the body, I think that that's a pretty good yardstick there for a canvassing board member. And I'm sure that the Democratic Party could do the same thing. Because they know their voters pretty well. They know their precinct numbers very well. There aren't that many of them, so they know them really well. So I just wanted to piggyback on that. I would feel really good about that.
All right, well, let's try to fit this in here. So let's take page 1. Is there any amendments to page 1? Okay, page 2, I think we'll probably have something here. So on line 10, you've got 2 electors who are residents of the county with 1 elector selected by the county central committee of each of the 2 largest major political parties in the county. If
Sorry, thank you. Define the word largest, how would that be defined? Is that by voter registration? Probably?
Yes, do you want to add something more descriptive in there? 2 largest major political parties. As defined by registered voters
Yes.
of the
I
county?
think that was one of the concerns that the Malcolm had, County Clerk Malcolm had testified. Is that, Malcolm, good with that?
Okay, if there are not 2 major political parties in the county, or if a county central committee fails to select an elector for the county canvassing board under this section, the county clerk may appoint any unfilled positions on the county canvassing board. So, okay, with you. Mhm.
Forgive me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, start over again. We're on page 2, line
Page
14.
2, line 14.
After political parties.
After political parties, insert by registered voters in the county.
All right. Are you okay, committee, with the rest of the language on 2, or would you like further amendment? Representative Webb?
Do you want to be more descriptive on line 14 there and say that the political parties by the number of registered voters and rather than just by the registered voters, which is a little more vague?
That's a good point.
Okay, let's treat that as an amendment, one amendment. And would you like that to be your amendment? To put in, just so we can get
That's fine.
each of them in. And is there a second to that amendment? All right, and Matt, do you have the language used there?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to repeat it the way I have it written. So the sentence would read, the county canvassing board is the county clerk and 2 electors who are residents of the county, with 1 elector selected by the county central committee of each of the 2 largest major political parties by the number of registered voters in the county. Correct?
Or as, maybe as determined, I mean, let's discuss that. I mean, I just think it needs to be a little more definitive.
Instead of by the registered voters in the county, have it be
Yeah,
as determined.
as determined, or, yeah, whatever we feel is, unless it's being too nitpicky.
Political parties from the list of registered voters. I was just thinking political parties from the list of registered voters for that party.
We're all working together here.
Mr. Chairman, just a suggestion. Could do a subsection that says, for the purposes of this section, largest is defined as most, or largest number of registered voters within that county on the first day of January of a general election year. Gives us a firm date and time, when are we pulling the number, and just defines that it's number of registered voters. So it would accomplish two of our concerns.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I might be able to say it again.
I was going to ask you when you were up before, actually, do you have written recommended, based on conversation, do you have written recommended amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I don't, but I can.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to provide those to any member of the committee or the bill sponsor, Mr. Chairman.
This is probably simple enough. I think we
Okay.
can, just with your help, we can get through these amendments.
So, Mr. Chairman, my suggestion was a subsection that would say, for the purposes of this section, largest political party is defined by most registered voters within the county on the first day of January of a general election year.
I think that's good. Representative Webb, would you accept that as your amendment?
Yes.
And does a second confirm? Did we have a second? Yes. Okay. Second is Representative Hoft. All those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That amendment carries. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, could I
for
ask-
that,
Could I ask the gentleman to repeat that once more?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, it would be, for the purposes of this section, largest political party is defined as most registered voters within the county on the first day of January of a general election year.
I'm sorry, just that last phrase, following in the county.
On the first day of January of a general election year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right,
Mr. Chairman.
committee, rest of page 2. Any amendments?
I just was gonna, can I interject something here?
Representative Webb.
It's getting really nitpicky now, but he didn't use the word "the," and I think that makes, rather than just most, the most, just to clarify. And if it's being too nitpicky, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we'll just make sure that's in that amendment, Matt.
Okay.
Any other amendments on page 2? Rest of the language from 15 down. Okay, page 3. That's okay. Page 4. Representative Lucas, do you have an amendment?
Well, just being a little picky here, but I'm on page 4, line 3, the canvassing board shall what? It doesn't have anything that the canvassing board is doing there. There's a colon and nothing follows.
I think you could almost just strike that.
Right? I think that could, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I just.
Was there a statute page missing there that? Guess we don't want to strike what's in statute.
Mr. Chairman, the rest of that statute just outlines the duties of that board. And so there's Romanettes underneath there in the full statute.
Okay, if you can, just pull the rest of that statute in.
Here, we should probably use the microphone.
Okay, so committee, if there's any other amendments, we had a discussion of whether we want 3 or whether we want 5. If somebody wants to change it to 5, make the amendment, and how those other 3 are selected. Representative Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to leave it at 3. I think that'd be better, and just have one each from the political parties, and then the county clerk. I think that would be sufficient, be easier.
Okay, would you like to make that as an amendment, please?
Yes, but there would be 3 members of the canvassing board, 1 from each political party. It would be, I guess it'd be picked from the precinct committee people in the county.
Okay, so I think we're actually good because on page 2, line 10, it says, the county canvassing board is the county clerk and 2 electors who are residents of the county, and follows through with the amendment that we made. So that's 3 members, 1 being the county clerk, the other 2 being selected by each party.
So I'm reading that a little differently on that line 10. to me, it reads that the county clerk and 2 electors who are residents of the county, with 1 elector being, so this is if the board stays at 3 and not at 5. It would be the county clerk and 1 from, let's just say, the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, right? So that would be the 3 total, and not move it to 5 unless you changed it to 5. Let's see,
That's up to the committee. What's the pleasure of, we had 1 amendment that left it at 3. Let's just go ahead and vote on that. So we have an amendment, a motion to leave it at 3 with the language that's there, with 1 being the clerk, 2 being the electors that are selected by each of the major parties. Is there a second to that? Okay, seconded by Representative Brown. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries. Yeah. Are there any other amendments? Yeah. Representative Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm looking at page 2, starting at line 12. If we have three canvassers who are residents of the county, with 1 elector selected by the county central committee, okay, but of that, then it would be of the 2 largest major parties. Never mind, it's good. I'm cool. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the reference to statute on page 4, line 3, after the word shall, I just want to clarify that that was a formal amendment, to add the language that I find in statute, following that word shall. And if that was a formal amendment, who made that amendment and whether it passed?
I didn't, I don't think there was.
There was,
Okay. Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded, and we're basically striking, or pulling the rest of the. Yeah, we'll bring the rest of it. Okay, so the amendment is to pull the rest of the statute in. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Will that do that?
yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We made that a lot tougher than it needed to be. All right, are there any other amendments? Okay, we are voting on House Bill 144 as amended. Please have a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a roll call vote on House Bill 144, County Canvassing Board. Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Locke.
Aye.
Representative Heft.
Aye.
Representative Johnson.
Aye.
Representative Lucas.
Aye.
Representative Webb.
Aye.
Representative Weber.
Aye.
Representative Yin submitted an absentee vote of no. Chairman Knapp.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, 8 ayes, 1 no.
Having received a favorable vote for House Bill 144, it does pass the committee. Next up, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next up, we have House Bill 262, County's Limitations on Holding Reserves. Let's see. We have our own Representative Johnson, and you can stay there, or you can go to the dais if you'd like. All right. Representative Johnson, go ahead and present your bill.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Knapp. House Bill 262, it's a county's limitation on holding reserves. And what's brought this all about is I'm from the number 2 county, and there was a considerable amount of reserves in the last 5 years that have been held back. And so I don't think this is the county commissioners or the county's position to hold those reserves. It is their duty is to spend those monies wisely or return them to the people that they belong to. And that's my position there. It's an issue of overcharging. Since 2020, Laramie County, I'm going to speak about Laramie County because I live here, but there's 15 other counties in the state that have the same problem. They have excess reserves. And I'll say that excess reserves are anything above 1 year of the last year's expenses. So Laramie County spent $87 million last year on expenses. Anything above that is excess and should be returned to the taxpayers according to this bill. So excess funds is held by the county. No county shall hold excess funds in excess that exceed the county's annual spending amount. The county, July 1st of 2025, and each July thereafter, the county shall calculate the county's annual spending amount and estimate whether an excess fund will be available at the end of the fiscal year. Each county will report to the state Department of Revenue their calculation. And this subsection, an estimate of excess funds that will be available at the end of the fiscal year. It shall also provide notice to residents in accordance with the subsection of this section. The refund and excess funds of residents to the county in accordance with subsection of this section. So it's not just the property tax owners of the individual house or apartment house. This money comes from our oil revenues also. That is taxed at 100% of the 12 mills levy. The county, the property taxes are only charged at 9.5% of the 12 mil. So it's not just the people that live in the houses that are being charged excess. The oil companies that produce this abundant revenue for us are also being overcharged. And they should be given that money back too. It's our money, it's the taxpayers' money that would go to other better used fund or help provide for their employees and their productivity in their own businesses. So I've got I think everybody got this handout. It shows the 23 counties in Wyoming and the 15 of them that have excesses. And I don't want to mention the first one, but it has quite an excess. It has 4.4 years of expenses, which I think is excessive. You know, everybody has been hurt by this property tax fiasco where it was just on autopilot and it got out of control. Well, I would like to have the counties under control, that they would see this coming and either slow the rate of the taxes that they give or give it back to us. So.
All right. Questions for Representative? Representative Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Johnson, I just want to clarify, on page 4, line 9, you've got excess funds shall be refunded on a pro rata basis. And is that based on the amount of taxes that a citizen pays or paid in the previous year?
No,
Representative Johnson?
thank you, Chairman Knapp. What page was that and what line
Page
was that?
4, line 9.
Excess funds shall be funded on a pro rata basis.
Yeah, based on what, like the amount of tax they paid the preceding year?
Yes,
And then would that be a household, like a property tax? Or would
It would
it
become-
be
it would come to
per
that.
citizen or?
you come back to the owner of record.
Okay.
Follow up? Other questions? Representative Webb?
I just wonder as we go through this, is this just gonna cause excessive spending by counties at the very end of the year? And just on, I'm not gonna call it wasteful things, but are we gonna accomplish anything?
Representative Johnson?
Chairman Knapp and Representative Webb. It could very well do that, but I think that with the taxpayers keeping an evil eye out on the comings and goings of the commissions, county commissioners, that they would keep an eye on that. I know there would be a tendency to spend that money before we could see how much is there, but we're limited to one subject per bill. I couldn't put that in this bill.
Okay, follow up?
Yeah, going down a different avenue. What about small counties that don't have the ability to, they may have their year's worth, but that year's worth is a much smaller amount than somebody like county number 2 that has a year's worth. And unforeseen emergencies could put those counties in dire straits.
Representative Johnson?
Chairman Knapp, Representative Webb, I would say that those counties are managing their budget fiscally responsibly, and that's what we really want. We don't want them to have excesses. If you look at the bottom 4 counties here, they all have, here's one north of us county that has 0.9 years worth of expenses. So that would be within the realm. That wouldn't be an excess of holdings. So if you're managing your county wisely, you will not have this excess.
Follow up?
Yeah, I guess I would like a follow-up on that. If there was a major catastrophe of some kind, the county, let's say it's a county road that gets washed out, completely gets washed out. A county with a 1 year of reserves of however many thousands or millions of dollars would be able to absorb that much easier than a county that has a smaller amount of money, but yet the cost to replace that road is basically the same in each county, and that's my concern.
Representative Johnson?
Chairman Knapp, Representative Webb, I would say that the counties that don't have those reserves, they would be in trouble anyway with that. They're not going to be able to hold excess because their tax base isn't large enough to get any excess monies out of it. Understand what I'm saying? So they would necessarily maybe have to come to the state and ask for help that way. But the larger counties should be able to handle that pretty easily. If you have a year's worth of excesses, as you spend that, you're getting replenished every year. So I think that would be it should work out pretty well for them.
Follow up?
No, that'll be fine, thank you.
Vice Chairman Locke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and question for you on the approach, in here, you're talking about refunding money. Did you consider refunding, seems to me to get more than a little complicated. Did you consider something like having them, I don't know, change their meals or make some other adjustments to do that? This, my concern is just, and I guess just changing meals isn't enough, but the refunding piece of it is where it gets a little complicated in my mind. Maybe you can make that clear. Do you have a clear picture in your head how that refund works?
Representative Johnson?
Chairman Knapp, Representative Locke. The, if the county commissioners were to drop the mill levy to the I think it's 8.5%, they would also lose money on they would have to drop the mill levy on their oil royalties also. So they would lose considerable more money that way. I would entertain any thoughts we had, but I just think that money should be returned to the taxpayer, even if that taxpayer was a oil driller, oil company, or a commercial apartment building owner, or a private citizen.
All right, I have a couple questions for you. My history, just so everybody knows, I was a county commissioner for 12 years, so my questions will be from that. And just going to page 2, line 9, where you define excess funds. We say excess funds means any funds held by the county in excess of the annual spending amount. And your annual spending amount is defined by the average amount of total expenditures for the county in each of the immediately preceding 5 fiscal years. So when you talk about excess funds, a county typically, you've got, let's say you built a building, and you've got with that building a major maintenance fund that you put away so that the interest off that fund actually replaces any AC unit or any major maintenance for that building. And you also have a replacement fund for that building or a depreciation fund. Since a county will hold much of its excess revenue as depreciation funds or maintenance funds, would you include those in your excess funds calculation?
No, those would be separated out, as would any future savings for capital projects or road construction or things like that.
Okay, and then second question, because a county receives taxes in several different forms, so they receive sales tax, property tax, ad valorem, how would you go about deciding how those funds would be returned to the taxpayer? Would you find that to be unmanageable?
I don't think that would be manageable. I think it would default to the taxpayers, property taxpayers. I think if you started going to the registration of vehicles, it'd be too complicated. You know, there could be corporations with several vehicles or some such.
Yeah, and I assume you're talking about taxes here, not fees, but
Yes.
fees are included. That's another factor that's included in revenue. So I think, are there any other questions? I think I'm going to bring up the County Commissioners Association so that, yeah. Gentlemen, welcome. If we can just start on your end, introduce yourself and educate us.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Reeman here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. I'm proud to be joined by three of our finest county commissioners in the state. To my immediate right is Johnson County Commissioner Bill Novotny, our immediate past president. To his right is Mike Jones from Fremont County, and all the way down there at the end is Robert Short from Converse County, our current vice president of our association. Mr. Chairman, I do want to thank Representative Johnson for engaging me in a number of conversations on this issue, and certainly he's had a chance to speak with one of my Laramie County commissioners on this particular issue. Mr. Chairman, there are a lot of issues at play with this particular legislation. Let me start with the Constitution. And I'm not an attorney, so I'll start there, but I've been working around these issues for quite a long time and have seen these sorts of things come up, and I think it's important to take a look there. So in particular, if you look at Article 16, Section 6, that provision of our state our Constitution says that neither the state nor any county, city, township, town, school district, or other political subdivision shall, and the first provision of that is, loan or give its credit or make donations to or in aid of any individual, association, or corporation except for the necessary support of the poor. This has been generally the provision that a number of attorneys, your attorneys included, that have said we can't be like the state of Alaska and just give back funds, whether that's to a company or to an individual, without getting adequate consideration back. Adequate consideration being some sort of service back for that. So in particular, the provision that we have to return monies would likely violate that particular portion of the Constitution from my perspective. Mr. Chairman, just looking at why do we have reserves? And this could exist for the state, it exists for counties, it could exist for lots of your special districts or for municipalities. I'll start with minerals. And Representative Johnson was right to point those out. And he mentioned that we tax minerals at 100%. The reason that we tax minerals at 100% is because we only tax them once in their lifetime, and that's when they're severed from the ground. We don't charge them an annual assessment like we do for residential property or commercial property. We only get to do it once, and that is part of the conundrum for a county commissioner or anybody else, because that's your one chance to garner revenue from that particular resource. And I'm happy to provide you with a spreadsheet that shows you what that looks like for each of your counties. And as one example, Campbell County, residential property taxes of their entire property tax base is just over $4 million. The mineral portion is just over $54 million. But our tax system keeps them together. The Constitution ties those two things together, and until we ever sever the two of them, when you tax minerals, you've got to tax residential property. So that's one reason in terms of the minerals. Mr. Chairman, why does Natrona County have a pretty sizable chunk of reserves at this point in time? Well, just a couple of years ago, that particular county sold their hospital and realized $100 million in revenue. The way I would read this bill, potentially, it's a little complicated in trying to determine who gets that money, is that if the county held that to the end of the year, they've got to give it back to the hospital that, or to the company that just bought the hospital. And I don't think that's what we want. Those commissioners have decided they want to hold that money and ultimately utilize it as a mechanism to be able to ultimately reduce revenues or taxes elsewhere in the system. And so that's one big reason that they have reserves. Mr. Chairman, I'll just use one other quick example. For those of you that haven't, aren't aware of this, a few years ago, we were in a situation where we had hundreds of mineral companies that were not paying their taxes, their property taxes on time. That went from a situation where it was about a 1% of our mineral taxpayers up to 10% over just a matter of a few years, which forced the legislature to make a big change. Most of our property taxes are paid 18 months after the assessment really happens. We decided we were going to move all of those mineral companies to paying on a monthly basis. But that left us with an 18-month period where we have to go back and grab that additional money. And we said we're going to allow those companies to pay it over 13 years, is what the statute provides. Well, revenues happen to be pretty good in a number of instances, and perhaps Commissioner Short can speak to this a bit more. But in some instances, the vast majority of mineral payers in those counties decided they were going to prepay all of that so that they didn't have to pay over those 13 years. Our recommendation as an association, and frankly a recommendation that came from the legislature, is you better put those monies aside. Don't just use this as a windfall to go build the Taj Mahal. Set them aside, because collecting property tax on a monthly basis is going to be a lot like collecting sales and use tax on a monthly basis, and it's going to go up and down. You're going to want to have those revenues so that you have some flat spots. And so yes, some of the counties have built up some additional reserves, but it was not because they were being greedy. We were trying to collect taxes that were frankly due from 18 months ago. So that's one. I appreciate the conversation that Representative Webb brought forward. If you look at the spreadsheet that Representative Johnson has provided, I think Niobrara County happens to be one of those top-end counties there in terms of the year of expense there. Niobrara County is a county that frankly scrapes by, has the smallest budget in the state. I suspect they'd be pretty proud that they've got a $7 million reserve. It's a county that only started offering its employees health insurance. And I say employee, I'm not talking about their family. They only started doing that just a few years ago. So they've made some strides. They're trying to do some things. But I just, for purposes of just looking something up, I went to see how many miles of county road does that county have. They have 571 miles of county road. To the representative's point, wash something out, $1 million aggregate a mile. They're not going to get very far on that $7 million without coming back to the state. And we've tried to be in a place where we're not begging to you. We want to be self-sufficient, and these reserves are part of our self-sufficiency. Mr. Chairman, I've said a lot. Unfortunately, this bill is not something that we support, and would appreciate you not moving it forward this session.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Is there questions for him first? Because he's a darn fine executive director, and I'm sure you probably do have some questions for him, or I'm happy to go ahead before I jump the gun.
I don't, but for a matter of time, could you explain to us what would be the budget process for a county in relation to the mill that's set for that budget? Any one of you?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Robert Short. I'm a county commissioner in Commerce County. I serve as the vice president of the WCCA. When we take into account what the county needs to sustain our costs associated with providing the services that are statutorily defined. In that, we have to take into account each of the different departments, the needs of each different department as they submit their budgets to us, including cost of living, of course, the cost of providing health insurance, the cost of inflation as it pertains to providing those services, the materials that we need to procure, the equipment that we need to supply, the cost of fuels, et cetera, in setting the mill. We have to design around that what we believe will be a reasonable projection of what the revenues are, what we can provide insofar as needs in the county. In my county in particular, Converse County, we have a 591 miles approximately of county roads. On those county roads, we have a large number of users that are energy extractors or revenue producers for us in our state. We have to provide a thoroughfare for those folks. To do that, for example, we did a road last year that was 12 miles, and it cost us roughly $11 million for gravel. That sounds like an extraordinary amount of money for gravel, doesn't it? 21 miles, $11 million. Well, it turns out the nearest gravel pit is 50 miles away. It's not the cost of gravel, it's the cost of hauling it there. And it turns out nobody wants to work at a cheaper rate than what they worked for last year, because the cost of fuel didn't drop, the cost of tires didn't drop, the cost of engines and oil, et cetera, did not decrease. It only increased. So when we try to project what we are going to do with what we believe is the potential amount of revenue each year, we take into account what a project looks like, what projects we think we can potentially tackle in a year, and then set our mill based on what we believe we can do given all the prior mentioned constraints. And of course, Mr. Chairman, the only guarantee is there's no guarantee. The cost, or the price of oil, the price of gas, which are main drivers for our revenues in Converse County, as you in the committee well know, the only guarantee there is there's no guarantee. Furthermore, as the collection of ad valorem taxes changed a few years ago from an 18 months in arrears, as the executive director mentioned, to a monthly ad valorem, we also have to take into account that there is a true-up period in September of each year. So we have to refund to those taxpayers of ad valorem taxes each year in order to account for what we over-collected based on the price of oil, the volume that they produced. We have to set aside an amount of money to true up that collection. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but it is very complicated, and it was something maybe we didn't totally understand when we first got into that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Novotny?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could be more simplistic on that. If you look at, we only have 2 counties that do not assess their full 12 mills. In the instance of my county, our operating budget is $14 million. Our 12 mills generate just over $5 million. That is assuming that number before there are any refunds that are either backfilled through the various programs or not. That also assumes that every taxpayer, when that valuation number is certified, is going to pay their taxes. In the instance of my county, as the good chairman also knows, because he was a major part of the mineral bankruptcy work, we're owed $48 million. That basically the largest taxpayer in our county started in 2017 of just not paying their ad valorem taxes. So we do not budget to the mills. We build our budgets to what we need, and then we go out and find the income. We are majorly dependent on payment in lieu of taxes. If you are a public lands county, in my county, we get about 70 cents an acre for what the federal government owns. And I can guarantee you that I provide law enforcement roads out to that. It does not cover those services that I provide with 70 cents an hour. We're dependent on direct distribution from you, our portions of severance tax, sales tax, grants, positions that we have, like our emergency management coordinators, our county attorneys, public health officers and others that are either a cost share through the state or a direct appropriation in the state, because we are doing the work of the state. You will remember that we are the political subdivisions of you. If I could speak a little bit just to my revenue and my reserve. If you look at my reserve account, at one point, my county's valuation was $1.8 billion during coal bed methane. Today, it is 420 million. The citizens of my county do not expect less services just because my valuation is no longer 1.8. My revenues, a majority of them are from coal bed methane revenue that we were able to collect. But a major part of my revenues are a recreational lease that we have the Wyoming Game and Fish. When Texaco exited the state of Wyoming in the 1990s, Governor Geringer negotiated the transfer of that property to Johnson, Sheridan, and Campbell County. Today, Johnson County is the sole owner of that. We have built a reserve for that based off of the lease that we received from the Wyoming Game and Fish. The last thing that I ever want to have to do is stand before you or the Water Development Commission and be like La Perrelle and say, we have no money if we have a major catastrophic failure in our resource. Within our reserves, we also have money that was collected through a special purpose tax for the building of a library. Under state statute, that money can only be utilized for the maintenance and operations of that library project. And you'll see special purpose taxes used across your counties for very specific things. Under this bill, that's counted against my cap of what we can hold. I can't refund those monies to the sales taxpayers because state statute doesn't allow me, because it has to be held specifically for the maintenance and operation of that. My county courthouse was built in 1884, pre-statehood. We're still in that building and we're very proud of it. We have a reserve for that building so that if our boiler fails or our roof gets blown off, we're not forced to come down and seek a mineral royalty grant or go to the SLIB board. We have been responsible in our savings. It's not excess dollars. We can account for them. When you look at what you allow us to do with our county road fund dollars, which are funded by the fuel tax, you are now allowing us to save $100,000 a year towards the purchase of a road grader. $100,000 doesn't buy a road grader. And so we save that money over time that is included in that aggregate amount of reserve. You, by passing this bill, are inhibiting my ability to plan for the long-range needs of my counties, purchase the equipment that protects the residents of my counties by providing them with navigable and travelable county roads.
If you, just a question, if you discounted your reserves, let's say you discounted every depreciation for culverts, roads, bridges, your retirement funds, anything of that sort, what are you truly left with for savings?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it would be pretty close to 1 year's worth of operating budgets, which don't we as people, and certainly we also encourage the state of Wyoming to save for that rainy day, that we would like to be able to, if there were no taxes collected in my county for a year, that we could continue to provide that services for that year while we let ourselves down.
So in a downturn, that actual 1 year could be quite a bit less than that.
Mr. Chairman, it could, and I wish when those reserves were put together that we factored in the cost of inflation, because that's one of the biggest factors that's hurting us today, is that we are being hammered by inflationary costs for our labor, for our supplies, our equipment, and our benefits.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the committee? Representative Johnson, you have comment or question?
Thank you, Chairman Knapp. I just have a few questions for you, county commissioners. You did say that you gave money back. Is that correct? In your testimony, you just said you gave money back from, what was it?
Mr. Chairman.
Ed Borland, I don't know.
Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Johnson, the true-up associated with ad valorem tax collection,
Okay.
because the price of oil varies over the course of a year, the taxes that we collect are not necessarily based on the sales price at that time. So if the price of oil drops during the collection time over the course of the year, then the companies that produce that oil come back with a notice of valuation correction to the county assessor. That money is then asked for, if you will, a refund associated with the value of that extracted oil. The volume did not change. The value per volume changed. And therefore, we have no choice but to refund to that entity the difference in what we projected the price would be versus what they sold that oil at.
Thank you.
Is it,
Follow-up, Representative.
isn't that similar to what happened with our property tax increases? They've gone up 70% in the last 5 years. And I would ask you also, have any of you dropped your mill levies to help people in your counties?
Commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Jones, Fremont County. We did that a couple of years ago. It amounted to about $9 per household. We dropped from 12 to 10. I would say, looking back on that, we would have been better advised to push people into the refund programs that are available than do something like that. It was kind of done in a quick fashion. And we changed it back the next year. And so it didn't amount to much to the property holders themselves. I also wanted to add that we under Senate File 60, when we changed from the 18 months to the in the month for ad valorem, 67% of our extractors paid up front. So we've allocated those funds to be like a mineral stabilization account, because we know over 12 years, we've gone from 1.2 billion in valuation to 563 valuation to back up to 1.1 and now back down to 800. We have a lot of fluctuation, and those funds really were a prepayment for us. And so we've utilized those exactly in that fashion. Add just a little bit more. Some other nuance here is when you work on a road, so we're currently evaluating some roads to do some improvements, okay? We had farm to market roads that were established 60 years ago, and now we have bicyclists and walkers, and those roads have changed considerably. Well, to address those roads, we have to do a public evaluation, bring in ideas from the public. How would you like to see this? Throw out options. We have to hire an engineering firm to facilitate that. That takes usually 6 months or a season, if you would. And then you have to go to a design, which can cost, in that first phase would be about $250,000. The next phase could be $300,000 to $500,000, could take another year to do just the design. And once you have a design, then you can go out and say, okay, state and federal dollars, because it's $1 million a mile minimum. It's priced that now, okay, on a paved road, but let's talk about gravel even. But these are paved roads. This is a 6 to 10 year process. And it's no different than other capital projects, is it takes a very long time and will probably outlast a couple of commissioners, which unfortunately you lose the thought process along the line. We have one road that we started working on in 1978, has gone through this cycle 2 to 3 times, and we get to a new commission and we're like, well, gee, what are we doing? Well, we've already spent this money getting to these phases. So my point is, here's again some additional nuance in how our funds are expended and the types of things we have to do to go long term and to plan for that we need those reserves. And so I hope I haven't been too redundant, but I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you for your testimony. I'm going to allow maybe 2 more questions if anybody has them. It's 11:30, so we need to keep moving here. So, are there any other questions from the commission or from the committee? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we were talking earlier about Laramie County. Representative Johnson is from Laramie County. I'm from Laramie County. And I have 11 years of their accounting here. And what I find amazing is in 2 of those 11 years, they had in excess of $3.6 million more than they collected in property taxes in reserve, just in 2 of those years. If you go through the full 11 years, they had an excess of well over 140 million, almost 141 million dollars in excess that they had. That's not just a little bit of money. That's not just over that 11 years, just enough to get by. That's excessive. And when the people of the county are hurting, don't you think that that's excessive?
Any one of the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to provide this information to Representative Brown. I've already provided it to Representative Johnson. I asked for Laramie County's numbers in particular. They gave me their spreadsheet, fiscal year 25. They have currently $92 million in reserves. That's 14 million less than they did in fiscal year 24. And they, all of these show the various categories that they have those monies in: emergency needs reserve, election equipment reserve, public works reserve, planning and development, health insurance, things of that nature. Again, I'm happy to provide that to the representative.
Follow up?
No. I'm not gonna give an answer.
Okay, one more question.
Thank you, Chairman Knapp. I would appreciate your spreadsheets, whatever you have. I have Laramie County 22 to 23. And it shows, I don't know, maybe I should give you all a sheet of this, but Laramie County collected $32 million in property taxes. They put $32 million in reserves. And I just think that's excess in 1 year. Is that normal? I mean, I think that the people of Laramie County should be a little bit upset and ask for some money back. And you also said that there was a refund. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, can I just, for the commissioners, answer this? So there are perhaps 2 refunds that exist in sort of the county commissioner world right now. The refund that you're hearing from the commissioner is that when those mineral taxpayers are paying on a monthly basis, they're doing that on an estimate. They are making that estimate and they're making their payment to the county. That happens before the county actually sets its mill levy for a year. And when I say the county, I'm actually talking about the county, the special districts, municipalities, school districts. So it's all based on an estimate. Once they've set the actual mill levy, then we have to figure out, it's a true up. We have to determine, did they pay the proper amount? In some instances, we got to go back out to mineral payers and say, guess what? You owe a little bit more based on what the mill levy is, the actual mill levy. And in some instances, they've overpaid based on that estimate. Maybe we reduced the mill levy within the county, and now we have to go back and refund those. And that's the refund he's talking about relative to the mineral ad valorem system. There is one other refund. It's no different than the refund you all have for property tax. You have appropriated at the state level. Just a couple of years ago, you granted the authority for counties to actually institute a property tax refund program. There are 5 counties in the state that have established property tax refund programs. Converse County happens to be one of those. In fact, it comes out entirely out of their monies. So the school district, the special districts, municipalities get all of their money. But their county has decided that they want to participate alongside you and provide some refunds. In fact, their refund program is larger than the entirety of the property taxes that the county itself collects from residents. So those are two refunds that exist in the system right now.
All right. Thank you to the association for trying to shed some light and educate us on counties and how they're funded and what expenditures you have and what reserves you have. Thank you. Are there any other agencies here from either revenue or?
Looks like you're stuck with me, so here we go. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, my name is Bob McLaurin. I'm with the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. I'm here with the Mayor of Pinedale, Matt Murdock, and he's gonna speak for our association on this issue, very briefly, but he's gonna speak on it. Thank you.
Please proceed, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the committee. As Mr. McLaurin pointed out, I am the mayor of Pinedale and also on the board of directors of the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. As you know, that's not me, or it is. Yeah. As you know, WAM is very much committed to government by as close to the people as possible. We believe in the importance of home rule and local authority and local government making. We currently represent about 70% of the population of Wyoming, which elects many of you. And so I would like to speak to this bill. We do actually oppose it. I think we know that in the Constitution, it does give both municipalities and counties the authority to set their budgets and govern their funds. I will point out that Representative Johnson makes several good points, which I thank you for. And I think what you said actually is extremely important in the fact that, you know, you're looking at the numbers of reserves that are in some of these counties, and you're saying if people were upset, they would be doing something. The reality is they're not. In Sublette County, for example, we have very large reserves. Sublette County uses those reserves both for the towns of Pinedale, Marbleton, and Big Piney. Helps us to do matches for YDOT, our airports. As the county commissioners outlined very clearly, there are a large number of capital expenses that come along. I struggle, to be very honest, with this concept that counties, or maybe eventually one day municipalities, couldn't have some sort of reserves that would be determined by a year of what our budget is. We have no clue what next year is going to bring. The responsibility of good leadership is not to plan on last year, but to think of next year. And we have to be prepared for that. And there are so many expenses coming our direction from so many different ways that we have to be prepared. As the commissioners pointed out, values go up and down. Sales and use tax is not anything you can really budget off of. I struggle philosophically that if the state were to say, we shouldn't have reserves, then the $30 billion that we have in state reserves should be returned to the people, or the MRG grant that goes both to the House and Senate should be fully funded, so that when we do come in for a water or wastewater treatment plant or roads, we actually have the funds for it. The town of Pinedale currently is looking at a massive YDOT project that's going to take easily $3 million of our reserves and our sales and tax uses just to match what YDOT is going to do. The counties manage far more roads, for example, than we do. I'm concerned because I think some of those reserves are extremely important and play an important role to making sure that the citizens of our county are taken care of. The other thing that I think is worth pointing out is the counties use those reserves to support a lot of different industries, roads, helping jobs and making the place enjoyable to live in, which is extremely important. It helps lower the cost of living for our citizens as well. And I don't want to keep on going too long, but I do think that our refund system is going to be very difficult. If I'm mistaken, I think there was a reference to Wyoming State Statute 23-107 in the bill, and I think that's actually game and fish, which we don't have anything like that within the county system to register
who those people are who pay. And finally, the penalties that are listed in this bill are extreme. If somebody were to go off it, they would have to pay double the amount withheld from their sales and use tax. That's punitive. And so I would respectfully ask you, and I'm open to questions if you'd like, but would respectfully ask you not to pass this forward into the body. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to speak on this bill? All right, I'll turn over the reins.
All right, thank you, Vice Chairman. Is there anybody online still for this, for this issue?
Mr. Chairman, there are 4 of the 5 that registered are still online, 3 to speak to this bill.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, let's let them through one at a time. Who is first?
Kelly Krakow, if I'm
All right.
pronouncing that correctly.
Krakow?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Krakow.
Committee members, Kelly Craig, I'm the mayor of Alvin. I'm just gonna add on a little bit of what was already said from the commissioners in the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. You know, I guess from what I hear on this, what is a good amount of reserves, whether it's 1 year or 2 year, I think that's the debate, but I got some concerns I have on that I'll get to. The other thing, I got some questions because this states in the bill it's county, and then it says total expenditure. So the two I want to address is I belong to a fire department, rural fire department. It is county, and I was on the landfill board, which is county. Do they fall into this is one question. And then some big issues I have with the reserves is the way our fire district worked. We come in a little oil money now, but in the past we had like a $60,000 budget. One of the big things the fire department needs is trucks. Well, quick attack truck now runs about 150,000. They go up from there. So what we've done in the past is you got a 60,000 budget, you try to put 20, 25, 30,000 a year in. Once you get up to 100, 125, you try to get grants, pay these trucks off. The way this bill is set up, if they could only go up to 60,000, trying to buy and purchase these equipment is very difficult now. And I'd say in another year, it's probably going to be impossible. The other one I want is I belonged to a landfill board for 23 years in eastern Laramie County. We have, when I got off there, a $5 million reserve. I know a lot of you are probably shocked. What does a little landfill need $5 million in reserve? We have about $1.5 million budget. Part of that is we were looking ahead in the future and looking in an enclosed area to dump the trash. We're not very far from Cheyenne. The wind don't blow, so I don't know why we need an enclosure to try to do what's right for our citizens in there. But the other thing of it is, out of over 100-acre landfill, I'm just going to do 40 acres. We have 3 more sales to do, probably in 30 years. To line these sales is about $2 million. Then in 40 or 50 years down, when this 40 acres done, we have to put a liner cap over that whole 40 acres. We could be looking at $20-25 million at today's cost. So you look at just today's cost here in the near future, we're going to have over $30 million in there. The way this bill is written, we could only have $1.5 million in reserves if this is considered part of the county, which I say it is. When it's time to close this landfill in 40 years, it could be worth 30 or $40 million. There's no money to do that, so that will come back onto the state. So I
Thank you.
just have, there's some different areas here, I think, under reserves. Just a few examples where that reserves could have to be way more than what it is. And in closing, I think one of the things is that you're saying mineral, a lot of these areas that have excess money, whether it's oil, gas, that, let's look at Gillette and Campbell County, what they've done with their excess money. If this bill was put in 30 or 40 years ago, what would Gillette and Campbell County be today? And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Representative Johnson?
Yeah, thank you for showing up to participate. This is counties, not cities or towns. So it's limited to counties' excess reserves. So thank you for your testimony.
Well,
All right,
Mr. Chairman, as I said, these are county fire districts, and the landfill I belong to is a county landfill. So I'm under, and when your bill says total expenditures, I consider them special districts, but since they are county, are they going to be drawn into this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you say you're in opposition?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for testifying. Thank you for waiting up for us too.
Yep, thank you.
All right, if you could bring the next person in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've admitted Devin Brubaker.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My
Good
name is Devin Brubaker. I'm the airport director for the Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport and president for the Wyoming Airports Coalition. Last Thursday, I emailed this committee my testimony in anticipation of missing the scheduled time last Friday. So I will keep this very brief. The Wyoming Airports Coalition stands opposed to this bill. Wyoming's airports are bound by federal law when it comes to revenues and how we utilize our revenues. This bill flies in opposition to that. And to be very clear, this bill flies in the face of good financial management by not providing any exceptions and by taking away local control from the county commissioners, thereby moving government further from the people. Mr. Chairman, earlier in the testimony, I think you asked a really great question to the bringer of the bill regarding capital reserves and depreciation reserves and such. And the bringer of the bill said that those were excluded, but I don't see that anywhere in this bill. This bill, if it were to move forward, needs a lot of work. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we stand opposed to this bill. Look forward to you all voting no on this and hopefully getting some good sleep tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Brubaker. You as well. Appreciate your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Brubaker? Okay, thank you. Next, we have Joel Shell. Is he still here?
Mr. Chairman, he is. I've admitted him.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Hello, Mr. Shell. Good to see you. Please give your testimony and then we might have a question or two afterwards.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joel Shell. I'm the treasurer in Commerce County. I've been in the treasurer's office for 33 years and treasurer since 2004. Tonight, I'm representing the Wyoming County Treasurers Association. When we met and discussed the over 500 pieces of legislation that were filed for this session, we voted to oppose 2 of them, and this being one of the 2 that we choose to oppose. That's unusual for us. Usually we leave the policy making up to you and we just come in and talk about maybe the challenges in administration. But we felt this bill in particular would not really achieve the desired goal. And that some of the mechanisms were problematic. And for that, Mr. Chairman, is mostly some of the things you've already heard, so I'm not going to belabor those points. I do want to specifically address some issues in the bill and the bill language. On page 2, lines 9 and 10, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Knapp, the question you already asked about the definition of excess funds, I think it's clear in this bill, in this language as it's written now, it says any funds held by the county. So as of July 1 of any year, we would be holding millions of dollars in funds that we've collected for other taxing entities, including school districts, that we have not yet distributed. So I don't believe the intent of the bill would be to punish us for holding those funds on July 1, but that would be included in the calculation the way you have it now. Not only that, we would have millions of dollars in clearing funds. We hold money in fiduciary capacity for joint powers boards or tourism boards or a predatory animal board. So I don't believe that that's the intent of the bringer of the bill, is to punish us for holding those, but that would certainly be the language that's stated now. And if you were going to amend that language, Mr. Chairman, we would ask for some precision there, because we do hold enterprise funds, things like insurance funds. And I'm certain you don't want to punish counties for having a fund that pays the millions of dollars we pay out for our employees' healthcare every year. We would also have restricted funds, unrestricted funds, and of course the general fund, but it seems like we're trying to get to more than the general fund. But we certainly need to identify what exactly you're talking about when you say the funds held by the county. And even the phrase held by the county in that same line is problematic. Do you mean literally held by the county, and that you're talking about the banking accounts that we hold? Or are you trying to get the funds, like if we own bonds, those are held by a third party. We have things pledged to us in custody control accounts. We would have funds invested in a state pool, for example, held by the state treasurer. So we would need some clarity there too, and to make this calculation of what these excess funds are as to what you mean by the funds and what you mean by the ones that are held by the county. It would be in what capacity. When we move on to the sort of punishment as to what happens, if we hold those funds, starting on page 3, lines 20 to 23, we have until July 15th to notify the people who are entitled to a refund. Now, the bill goes on to say that the people entitled to the refund are people who have been domiciled in the state for the last 12 months and who have been residents of the county for the last 12 months. Well, in Converse County, we have about 12,000 property tax accounts with 7,700 unique addresses. So we would be sending notices out to 7,700 people, because we wouldn't at that point know who those people are, which people actually qualify. I guess the mechanism would be we would send in July 7,700 notices out to the taxpayers. That would cost us roughly $4,000. And ask them maybe, hey, would you qualify for this? And if so, here's a form, return it back to us. And then we have 30 days to process those, figure out who the actual qualifiers are and based on the language of the bill, and then get that information to the clerk's office for them to issue, however many thousand warrants back to the taxpayers. So that mechanism is pretty unwieldy. And Mr. Chairman, you touched on a great question earlier too about the pro rata basis. The excess funds that we would hold at the end of the year are going to be from a variety of sources, including, as you've heard already, sales tax. We may have public funds, public health funds from people who paid for vaccines. We would have mineral taxes. We'd have house property taxes. So to figure out what the pro rata basis is problematic. And if the goal of the bill is to return dollars to the people, where the dollars belong, if my excess funds in a county are really coming from my sales tax revenue stream, but I'm going to take that excess money and give it back to homeowners who have been here a year, that doesn't seem to be meeting the goal of the bill. Mr. Chairman, finally, I would just say that there's already a mechanism in statutes that serves to limit reserves. That's in the Uniform Municipal Fiscal Procedures Act. That statute is 164105B. And what that statute says is that the amount appropriated to reserves under this subsection in any budget year shall not exceed 10% of the municipality's total revenues for that budget year. So that's a mechanism already in statute designed to limit reserves. And Mr. Chairman, the treasurers would suggest that if you want to get at reserves or find a way to further limit them, that would be a better mechanism than what you have before you this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Treasurer Shell. Are there any questions? All right. I'm sorry. Vice Chairman Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quickly, what was that statute again? You said 16?
16.4, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes, Mr. Shell.
164105B, B as in boy.
Thank you. Follow up? Any other questions? All right, thank you for testifying. We really do appreciate you staying up late with us and very good testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I think, is that the last person online?
Mr. Chairman, yes, it was.
Okay, with that, I will close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure? Okay, we have no motion, so that bill is officially tabled. No action. Okay, finally, we have a bill that has been over several committee meetings. It is House Bill 215. And I know we have some people here still for that one. Appreciate you being here. Sorry you had to stay an extra night. We're done with testimony internally. Did we have anybody online for that bill?
Mr. Chairman, we do have one individual online.
Okay, if we can let them in.
Mr. Chairman, the panelist's name is Cheryl Aguilar. Ms. Aguilar, if you can hear me, there you go. You should be able to speak now.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, or is it good morning? I'm not sure.
5 more minutes.
I am not here to testify or anything. I'm just got online just to make sure that if there were any questions, that I would be available to hopefully help out with those.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
it. So I'm good to go. Thank you for
Thank you, Ms.
everything.
Aguilar. Are there any questions for Ms. Aguilar? Okay, thank you for staying with us.
Okay, I will be on. So thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, so the one organization we hadn't heard from yet, if they do want to testify, I believe is the Clerks Association. Nothing to say on this anymore for this bill. Okay, I will close public testimony. What is the committee's desire? Okay. For discussion? Okay. So we have a moved and seconded for discussion's sake. Go ahead, Representative Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We sure had seen a lot of testimony on this, and I know I just had taken tons of notes, tons. I like the bill, and I know that a lot of people in my area think this is the way that they are wanting this to go through. I also understand that we have a lot of unanswered questions on how to get this implemented that I didn't have answered.
Okay. Since we have a movement on the bill, let's go ahead. I'll just have one thing for discussion before we
Okay.
vote on it. So this bill has gone about as far in this session as we can go. I think that it's going to require some amending. It's going to require some work on the fiscal note. And so I'm going to recommend this for our management council on moving it to an interim topic for discussion. If we had passed it tonight, honestly, we're so overloaded in committee of the whole that it probably wouldn't have seen any action there. So I've talked with the grassroots group, and I think they're amicable to furthering the discussion beyond this bill and coming up with something maybe for next session. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and take a a vote on the bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so when you say that it can go for an interim study, we still vote on the bill either way, and it still goes to the interim as a topic?
As a topic, correct. So even though we may vote this particular bill down here, we can still recommend an interim topic.
Okay.
And that'll, of course, it'll have to be approved by Management Council and confirmed with Chairman Case too, as well, so. Okay. Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, just for information, so if we were to vote to pass the bill, it would be the same thing. We just move it to an interim bill.
Yes, we could vote to pass the bill as well, if you'd like. Again, it would go to committee of the whole and probably die there, but.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I don't.
Yes,
believe-
Representative Hoff.
I don't believe this is ready for prime time. I think we need to take a deeper dive and do send it to the interim. I have some serious questions relating with costs, and I haven't gotten a definitive answer yet on costs. And I think there's a better way of going about this. That's where I'll leave that right now.
Okay. And with that, again, to the group, I would say, even if the bill gets voted down, obviously, that's a place marker for us to continue work on it, so please pull the board.
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote on House Bill 215, Prohibition on Electronic Voting Equipment. Representative Brown.
No.
Representative Locke.
No.
Representative Heft.
No.
Representative Johnson.
No.
Representative Lucas.
No.
Representative Webb.
No.
Representative Weber.
Aye.
Representative Yin submitted an absentee vote of no. Chairman Knapp.
No.
Mr. Chairman, you have 1 aye, 8 noes.
With that, House Bill 215 does not pass committee. And again, to the group, looking forward to working with you and continued work on the bill in association with the clerks. I think that's a very important piece to this. If we do work this, that it has to be with those that are responsible for our elections. So very, very much looking forward to it. Thank you again for your accommodating us over these couple days and into the wee hours of the morning. I do appreciate you coming down and staying and your testimony. So thank you. With no other business, this meeting is adjourned.